Howdy and hello everyone, and welcome to the first of many videos which will be talking about the lesser known commuter rails of North America. All the commuter rails I'll be covering either suffer from low ridership, are just not well documented in the railfan community, or a combination of both. This video will be going through all the commuter rails I feel suffer from one of these, and in the following weeks, I will go over each more in depth with footage cameos from local railfans in their areas, which I will get into in just a second. So now, let's get started. Special thanks to the Metrolink Railfan, Caltrain 900, Rose Lounge, Kalamazoo Aviation, Gloria Norway, Edison Z, Acela 2017, Kitten Plays, Huey Railfanning, and TC Railfan 15 for the footage they generously provided for this video. Check out their channels via the pinned comment or via the link in the description. But first, let's go over that cameo thing I mentioned. I want to help out smaller creators as much as I can, and so I had an idea when making this video. I thought, since I have footage of none of these commuter rails, I'll ask you, the viewer, for footage, and I will give you credit and give your channel a mention at the start of the video and in the comments/description. So here's how this will work. If you have footage of one of the commuter rails mentioned in this video, either email or create a Google Drive folder with the footage in it and send it to ray50082306@gmail.com. Make sure the folder is set to anyone with the link, and then you will be featured in the 5008 Trackside episode discussing the said commuter rail. And in fact, as you saw there at the start of the video, some of my fans have already sent in footage. So, now that that's out of the way, let's get started. Frontrunner is Salt Lake City's commuter rail. Frontrunner began operations on April 16th, 2008, making it 17 years old as of the making of this video. It runs between Provo and Ogden, Utah via downtown Salt Lake City. It runs Monday through Saturday and does not run on Sundays. Frontrunner utilizes a fleet of 18 MPI, MP Express, MP36PH-3C locomotives, 15 of which are in use. My god, that was some rapid-fire MP action. A fleet of 38 Bombardier bi-level coaches/cab coaches, and up until 2022, 14 Comet 1B coaches. All Frontrunner trains use this scheme, one I'm not particularly a fan of due to the lack of symmetry on the noses, but I do like the red, white, blue color combination. Frontrunner's full route used to stretch from Provo to Pleasant View. However, due to interference from Union Pacific, who just really cannot stay out of my videos, the service was cut back to Ogden in 2018. In terms of ridership, Frontrunner ranks 12th of all 32 commuter rails in the US, which is a really good position for it. It has the highest ridership out of all the commuter rails I'll be looking at in this video, with a healthy 4.2 million riders in 2024, and as of Q2 2025, reaches an average of 1,300 weekday riders. It's safe to say, Frontrunner doesn't suffer from low ridership, and it appears it provides a good service to the residents of the Salt Lake City metro area and beyond. However, in terms of rail fanning, Frontrunner suffers from what many light rail and standardized commuters suffer from when in a rail fanning perspective, which is the sameness of it all. All Frontrunner trains have the same schemes, the same rolling stock, and run mostly through quiet zoned crossings, and when they don't, the service doesn't exactly have the greatest horns. Because of this, Frontrunner is pretty forgettable from a rail fanning perspective, but in terms of providing a service to its residents, it does a pretty good job. It runs 30 minutes and hourly service from 4 a.m. to 12 a.m. Monday through Thursday, 4 a.m. to 1 a.m. on Fridays, and 6 a.m. through 1 a.m. on Saturdays, which is really good for a commuter-style service. While the stations aren't mixed-use TOD heaven, they aren't in the middle of nowhere and serve a good amount of people. The full travel time from Ogden to Provo is a little over 2 hours, which is unfortunately around 45 to 50 minutes slower than driving without traffic. With traffic, the service does become competitive, thankfully. Overall, Frontrunner seems like a great service to its community, but due to its rather boring nature, it's not exactly a rail fanning hotspot. Talk about a change in the atmosphere. We Go Star, formerly Music City Star, is Nashville, Tennessee's commuter rail and is not exactly the greatest, to say the least. We Go Star travels between Nashville and Lebanon, Tennessee. It operates in the mornings and afternoons of weekdays and certain weekday holidays. The service does not offer weekend service. We Go Star has a rather troubled history at that. Upon its service start of September of 2006, it was faced with underperforming ridership, and it was nearly discontinued only a few years after beginning service. Thankfully, the funding was provided to continue, granted, with it still operating at a major loss. WeGoStar utilizes freight-owned, single-tracked, winding curves, which leads to it being about an hour end-to-end, with driving being half that. WeGoStar's fleet is entirely made up of repurposed equipment. Not a single bit of rolling stock was made specifically for WeGoStar. The service utilizes 4 rebuilt ex-Amtrak F40PH-2 and F40PH-R locomotives, one of which was famously Loco 381, the F40 that wore the Pacific Surfliner scheme, only to be retired a year later. 381 wore the Surfliner paint all the way until 2022, when all of WeGoStar's F40s were repainted. In terms of coaches, WeGoStar uses Bud and Pullman gallery cars from the Chicago and Northwestern and the Burlington Route railroads, all of which were built before the 1980s, and the oldest being from the 1950s. The paint scheme is okay. The F40s look good, as purple is a pretty uncommon color for railroads, but the gallery cars, being gallery cars, can only wear so much, thus look rather bland. WeGoStar, in stark contrast to Frontrunner, has the lowest ridership out of all of the commuter rails we'll be looking at in this video, reaching a sad and low 125,000 riders in the entire year of 2024, with an even more depressing 500 average weekday riders in Q2 of 2025, ranking it 31st out of the 32 commuter rails in the US, just ahead of the West commuter rail. It's not hard to see why this is. There are only 12 trains daily, it doesn't run on weekends, the equipment is anything but modern, it takes twice as long as driving, and all the stations but Nashville are in a very low-density suburb with sparse bus service. So, in terms of being a service to its community, yeah, it's usable, but it's only useful to commuters during peak rush hour who happen to live near a station, and past that, you're just better off driving. Now, in terms of rail fanning, yeah, the service is pretty good. Was definitely better when the Surfliner F40 was still running, but F40s are a treat to see nowadays, and the gallery cars aren't that bad either. Which is weird, because I don't see many rail fanning videos on WeGoStar at all. I feel the service's rail fanning potential isn't given the credit it should, as the service runs through some pretty good looking areas. So overall, WeGoStar seems to be a pretty good service to railfan, but in terms of a service to its community, it's got a long way to go, and thankfully, it does appear that improvement is on its way. New Mexico Rail Runner is Albuquerque's commuter rail. Rail Runner began service on July 14th of 2006, and now's a good time to mention that a lot of these commuter rails were started in the mid to late 2000s and use very similar rolling stock. To take some words from a comment on one of my videos, all of these commuter rails are representations of a city or county saying, fine, you want commuter rail, there's your commuter rail, and then giving the population a rather underbaked and lackluster commuter rail, granted with a few exceptions. Anyway, back on the topic of Rail Runner, it runs from Santa Fe, yes, that Santa Fe, to Belen, New Mexico via downtown Albuquerque. It runs hourly/bi-hourly out of Albuquerque, with some trains going to Belen and others going to Santa Fe. The service runs from 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 4 a.m. through just before midnight on Fridays, bi-hourly on Saturdays from 7 a.m. to just before midnight, and only has 9 trains on Sundays running from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Rail Runner uses a fleet of 9 MPI, MP Express, MP36 PH-3C locomotives. I'm just going to stop saying the full name because there's so many of these commuter rails that use this thing, and a combined 22 Bombardier bi-level coaches and cab cars. The Rail Runner scheme is really unique and a very cool scheme. The whole aspect of the train being an actual road runner is cool, and the doors even make the road runner noise when closing, which is a nice little touch. This service is a near clone of Frontrunner in terms of everything else though. Same rolling stock, similar routes, and community served. Hell, even similar horns. So it's easy to see why Rail Runner doesn't exactly have a huge following in the railfan community. It's just kinda there doing its own thing. In terms of a service to its community, Railrunner is okay. As I mentioned, its frequencies are okay, its route is okay, and its service amenities are the basic commuter rail amenities. The total travel time from end to end is a little over 2 hours, which isn't too far behind driving's 1 hour 30 minutes without traffic, and with traffic it's rather similar. In terms of ridership, Railrunner is in the lower tier of commuter rails, but that's not an insanely low number like WeGoStar. In 2024, the service reached a respectable 773,000 riders at an average of 2,600 weekday riders in Q2 of 2025. Past all that, most of what I could say about Railrunner I already said about Frontrunner. They really are that similar. It serves its community well enough, but it is kinda boring to railfan. So here's a commuter rail that will actually be gone within only 2 months of this video being published. North Star is Minneapolis's commuter rail running from downtown Minneapolis to Big Lake, Minnesota. I wonder what they have there. North Star began service on November 16th of 2009, and just like Frontrunner and Railrunner, uses a fleet of 6 MP36s and 18 Bombardier bilevels. North Star runs 8 trains daily, with most traveling in rush hour directions during rush hour times. And, okay, let's just cut to the chase. This service really wasn't anything special. I'm mostly going to be talking about how North Star is shutting down soon here, and yeah guys, while the last thing we need is for a rail service to be pulled, North Star really was nothing special at all. It was the basic serve no one but commuters who live in the sprawling suburbs near our station story that is unfortunately copy and pasted everywhere in the US nowadays. And when it shuts down in January of 2026 and gets replaced with extra bus service, we'll really be losing nothing past North Star's potential. North Star ran on freight-owned right-of-way anyways, meaning expansion of the service would have required new infrastructure, which, considering North Star's state, was not going to happen. So in terms of North Star to its community, it was like Music City Star with just newer equipment. And in terms of rail fanning, it was like Frontrunner and Railrunner, nothing too special there. It ranks 30th out of 32 commuter rails in the US and had 127 riders in 2024 with 400 average weekday riders in Q2 of 2025. So once again, it sucks that North Star will be gone soon, but it's not like it and many of the other bottom tier commuter rails couldn't see this coming. SMART, or Sonoma Marin Area Rapid Transit, is the commuter rail for the northwestern part of California, and, given that VRE doesn't exist, is tied with Capital Corridor for the farthest north commuter rail in California. SMART is a rather new service beginning on August 25th of 2017. It currently runs between Windsor and Lake Spur, California. SMART runs very unique rolling stock, the Nippon Shiro DMU. This DMU is only used on 2 services being designed specifically for them, one being SMART and the other being the Union Pearson Express in Toronto. SMART's scheme is also something I like. It's nothing insane, but the green feel of it works very well with the forested feel of Northern California. The service runs every 30 minutes and hourly from 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday, with a gap in service at 11 a.m. On weekends, the service runs hourly to bi-hourly from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. While once again, the stations along the line aren't TOD and connection heaven, they don't just spend their entire time in suburbs and serve some relatively large population centers. In 2024, SMART had a total of 973,000 riders, just below 1 million, and had an average weekday ridership of 4,200 riders in Q2 of 2025. Overall, it appears this service serves its community well, and thankfully, this is one of the services on this list that is actively expanding. SMART at first only ran from the Sonoma County Airport to San Rafael. In 2019, the service expanded to Lake Spur, and just recently, in May 2025, the service expanded to its current terminus of Windsor. Part of what has made extensions so quick and frequent is because SMART's trackage was already there, but was long abandoned. SMART's trackage was once served by the Northwestern Pacific Railroad, but in 1958, service was discontinued due to passengers choosing to drive along US Route 101, which was growing in popularity. This means that the right-of-way already exists, and not much land had to be bought or drastically remade to expand service. Smart currently has 2 more stations planned on its current route, an extension to Heldsburg, which is funded and expected to be ready in 2028, and an extension to Cloverdale, which is planned but is still unfunded. Smart also has another line planned, being an extension to Vallejo and possibly even the Sweenson-Fairfield Amtrak station, which would double the reach of the current service. Overall, as a service to its community, Smart is currently pretty good and appears to be on its way to getting even better. However, just like many of the other commuter rails I've talked about in this video, for rail fanning, it's once again all the same trains running on the same trackage over and over again, leading it to being nothing insanely special. Okay, I'm gonna try and avoid the elephant in the room with this one because many of my consistent viewers probably know this commuter rail, but for all the wrong reasons. Sunrail is Orlando's commuter rail service. It runs from DeLand, Florida to Point Siena. Sunrail is also rather new, starting service on May 1st of 2014. Sunrail uses a fleet of 20 Bombardier bi-level coaches and a fleet of 11 Frankenstein-looking MP32PH-Q locomotives, which are rebuilt Mark GP38-2WP locomotives. Sunrail runs every 30 minutes to an hour with a few gaps from 5 a.m. to midnight. However, the service does not run on weekends. Many of Sunrail stations are unfortunately either in the middle of nowhere or are in suburban hell, which Florida might just be the king of. However, thanks to the service running frequently, running through downtown Orlando, and Orlando being a tourist hotspot, Sunrail manages to break the 1 million ridership mark, with it garnering 1.2 million riders in 2024, with an average of 5,200 weekday riders in Q2 of 2025. Sunrail's route is owned by the freight railroad CSX, however thankfully it's not too frequently used by CSX anymore, which is how Sunrail is able to get their frequent service, and Sunrail has plans to partner with Intercity Rail Brightline to not only run their service to the Orlando International Airport, but to also expand Brightline and Sunrail closer to the tourist attractions in the area, which is an effort that is seeing progress but is still yet to be a reality. While its stations are still not much to be excited about, Sunrail isn't awful at servicing its community, and thankfully is on its way to improving. Now, for rail fanning, it once again suffers from the same equipment, same train, over and over again issue, but Sunrail has one thing the others do not. I do not know what happened, and thankfully, it appears this problem is on its way to being fixed, but Sunrail has the worst horns I have ever heard. I'm combining these two because they're ran by the same agency and are both too short to make into a single segment. TexRail and TRE are two services that serve the Dallas-Fort Worth area and are a nice little transit island in the vast car ocean that is the Southwest United States. TexRail runs between Fort Worth and Plano, Texas via the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, and TRE runs between Dallas and Fort Worth. TRE is one of the older commuter rails we'll be looking at here, with its service starting on December 30th of 1996, while TexRail is the newest commuter rail here on our list, starting on January 10th of 2019. TRE utilizes a mixed fleet of 7 EMD F59PHs, 2 EMD F59PHIs, and 2 EMD F40PHs. TRE will also be receiving 5 Siemens SCD-42E locomotives next year to replace their F59PHIs and some of their older fleet. In terms of coaches, TRE uses a full fleet of Bombardier bi-levels. TRE runs every 30 minutes to every hour on weekdays from 4 a.m. to 12 a.m. Monday through Thursday, and 4 a.m. to 2 a.m. on Fridays, with some trains originating/terminating at either West Irving or Center Point Station. On Saturday, TRE runs exactly hourly from 5 a.m. to 1 a.m. TRE does not operate on Sundays. TexRail utilizes a full fleet of Stadler Flirt DMUs and... oh, hold on, I've had a realization. TexRail only consists of the segment from Fort Worth to DFW Airport. The portion to Plano is the Silver Line, which is operated by DART. the light rail operator in the area. They utilize the same equipment, so I figured they were under the same operator, but I guess not. Anyway, back on topic. TexRail runs every 30 minutes from 4 a.m. to midnight every day of the week. So this service is more like a light rail than a commuter rail, but the commuter rail ridership wiki still includes it, and there are only 9 stations, so it might as well be a mini commuter rail. The stations on TexRail and TRE are unfortunately the typical parking lot with transit station in either the middle of a suburb or the middle of nowhere. And if you're DFW North, absolutely the middle of nowhere. And Texans watching this video, please explain to me, what is the purpose of this station, because I'm having trouble finding one. There's also a station on the map called East Tex Yard Limit, which isn't actually a station, but it's on Google Maps for some reason. The one exception to the dumb park and rides past the downtown stations is this station along TexRail, North Richland Hill / Iron Horse Station, which has apartments built at the station rather than a massive surface parking lot. So in terms of ridership, TexRail and TRE both do rather well. TRE has a respectable 1.2 million riders in 2024 and an average of 4,600 weekday riders in Q2 of 2025. TexRail had less but was still rather high at 809,000 riders in 2024 with an average of 2,400 weekday riders in Q2 of 2025. This can, once again, be accounted to the high frequencies and not insanely awful connectivities of both services, but like all commuter rails on this list, some more development around the stations would be nice. Now for rail fanning, this is where the two services split off the most. TRE has an okay rail fanning presence. It's not everywhere, but most people know it exists. But with TexRail, I'm pretty sure most of the people watching this video who weren't from Texas, this is their first time knowing it existed. TRE has some varying equipment thanks to it being a completionist on getting all the EMD commuter locomotives for some reason, and they all don't have copy and paste K3s or the malformed P-horn Sunrail has. TexRail, on the other hand, is copy and paste Stadler flirts with the same one-tone horn every 15 minutes in either direction. So, for a service to their community, TRE and TexRail do rather well, and for rail fanning, TRE also does well, but TexRail is just another mundane service. VRE, or Virginia Railway Express, is the other commuter rail that serves the Washington, D.C. area. It has 2 lines, one traveling from Washington, D.C. to Spotsylvania, Virginia Station, and the other traveling from Washington, D.C. to Broad Run, Virginia Station. VRE began service on June 22, 1992, and currently operates a fleet of 20 MP36s and 100 Sumitomo Gallery cars, based off of the ones made by the Pullman Company. VRE is the commuter railroad that will unfortunately begin to bring us back to rush hour focused scheduling. On their Fredericksburg line, trains depart every 10 to 30 minutes going northbound from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. And after that, there is straight up no more northbound trains for the rest of the day. Then those same trains that went north head back south to the suburbs from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. out of Washington, D.C., with them departing every 30 to 40 minutes. In terms of their other line, the Manassas line, things are a bit better, but still not insane. From 5 a.m. to 8 a.m., trains depart from Broad Run Station around every 20 to 30 minutes. After that, there are 2 more northbounds, one at 3:38 p.m. and one at 5:10 p.m. For southbounds, there is 1 train in the morning departing Washington, D.C. at 6:35 a.m., and after that, there is a train at 1:15 p.m., and then a train around every hour to 30 minutes from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. And as you'd probably expect, the service does not run on weekends. Not exactly the greatest frequencies, but there are at least options for those going in rush hour directions. Past VRE stations near the capital, which are obviously surrounded by heavily built up and well-developed areas, VRE stations are the usual parking lots surrounded by sprawling, hard-to-access suburbs. In terms of ridership, VRE does surprisingly well for a rush hour service, reaching 1.6 million riders in 2024, with an average of 1,100 weekday riders in Q2 of 2025. This higher ridership is most likely due to VRE's location, its 2 lines, and it running more than just a few trains during rush hour. This is also helped by how many of its passengers would most likely drive to a VRE station in the suburbs and then take a train to the capital, where there's an abundance of last-mile transit to make getting around DC easy. However, as you'd expect, the lack of more trains past rush hour and weekend service leads to VRE having over 3 million less riders than its sister commuter rail service, MARC, which I will not be going over in this video. For rail fanning, once again, VRE suffers from the same train all the time issue. VRE specifically wasn't always like this though. VRE used to have F40 locomotives and various GP40 locomotives, which were all replaced by MP36s. So as a service to its community, VRE does okay, but it isn't anything insane, and for rail fanning, it's unfortunately rather mundane. And now finally we come to the last commuter rail I'll be covering, and the only one on this list in Canada. West Coast Express is Vancouver's commuter rail, traveling from downtown Vancouver to Mission, British Columbia. West Coast Express began operation on November 1st of 1995 and operates a fleet of 5 F59 PHI locomotives, 1 backup F59PH, 1 backup MP36, and 44 Bombardier bi-level coaches. West Coast Express is a rather puzzling commuter rail, as it operates a basic schedule of 5 trains every 30 minutes from 5 to 7 a.m. out of Mission City, and those same 5 trains traveling back every 30 minutes to an hour from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. And what do you know, this service doesn't run on weekends. Despite all of that, West Coast Express does rather well, achieving 1.5 million riders in 2024 with an average weekday ridership of 7,100 in Q2 of 2025. This surprisingly high ridership is due to a few things, mainly the fact that West Coast Express has half its stations in areas where you don't need a car to easily get around. Transferring to a bus or light rail makes sense, and given the insane bus and light rail ridership in the area, is something that isn't out of this world. Basically, West Coast Express is about the most useful and good you'll get a rush hour commuter rail to get, which explains why West Coast Express is making an okay recovery post-pandemic, meanwhile services like North Star aren't. Granted, this service hasn't had the most insane rise in ridership, as it is still a commuter-based service and people aren't commuting as much as they once were. Now, in terms of rail fanning, West Coast Express is, once again, very samey. While it's not always a PHI and Bombardiers, that is the usual set, and it's not like seeing an MP36 or PH is that interesting in the grand scheme of things. So, once again, we've got a case of good service to its community, but not exactly anything too crazy rail fanning wise. And with that, there's my overview of the lesser talked about commuter rails in North America. I definitely missed out on some, but those are the ones I felt needed the most attention. So don't forget to send footage to my email if you wish to be featured, and as always, I was 5008 Creations, you were the viewer, thanks for 10k, and I'll see you in the future. Goodbye.